Hi, my name is John Campbell. I've been with Tremco now for 23 years. I work in the Greater Toronto area, which is a large city of about 3.5 million people. About 10 or 12 years ago, I started working with design professionals, specifically engineers, to begin with, because I found that a lot of the roofs in my territory, the owners would turn to the engineer of record when they were concerned about their roofs. So the engineer that was involved through an architect during the design phase of a building. So I knew in order to access those roofs, I was going to have to get involved with the engineering community. At first I was quite I guess apprehensive and a little bit nervous about speaking with engineers because I hadn't done so until that point. And I found out that they're really not all that knowledgeable in most cases about roofs, as we'll find also, with architects, and they can really turn to us for a lot of help along the way. So at that time, I started with just 2 or 3 engineering firms. Now I work with probably 10 or 12 different engineering firms, and they account for a large amount of my business between architects and engineers. Probably about 70% of my business year to year comes from the architects and engineering community. Last year my sales were over $4 million, so it's a significant amount. But I found that they're not a lot different than our traditional business, because until 12 years ago, all of my business was what would be considered traditional Tremco business. So learning from my traditional experience, I brought that to the engineering architect marketplace, and they really appreciate sort of the no BS version of what they really need on a roof. And their repeat business is excellent. The way I've helped them along the way, that might be different to others, I'm not sure, is the fact that engineers are responsible for growing their own business, and in doing so, they have to be salesmen on their own, and they're quite uncomfortable with being salesmen. So I'll sit down with them over lunch, and I'll tell them what it's like to sell and how to sell, and give them sales tips, and actually bring them as much business as I can. When you're involved in things like BOMA or certain other associations, we meet the end user of a building. So those who need roofs also need below grade, wall help, all sorts of different help with their buildings that we can't access from the traditional roofing perspective. So I'll help introduce those engineers or architects to other avenues of business, and it starts a two-way sort of conversation, and they start to appreciate us for other reasons that they won't get from other roofing manufacturers. I also have a yearly golf tournament for my architects and engineers. So I'll actually have, I think this year we had 20 out, and this is the 10th year I've done so. So we get them, just them and their colleagues, and they get to know each other through their own associations. So when you can really sort of fortify a relationship with one engineer when you put them in the same foursome as another engineer that's just getting to know you. And so it really raises their level of comfort with dealing with not only yourself, but Tremco as a whole. I initiate a lot of my contact with engineers and architects through the lunch and learn schedules. Every engineer and architectural firm has some mechanism for educating the people within their office, and it's very, very easy to schedule lunch and learns. You generally do it through a single point of contact, which might be the receptionist, or somebody else has given that job. And they're very general. They don't know if they're scheduling lunch and learn for roofing, walls, or flooring, but it's very easy to get scheduled. So last year I did just under 40 lunch and learns, and once you get the process down, it's very, very easy. After you've done a presentation once or twice, you become very comfortable with it, ordering lunches, etc. They get a free lunch, and they're happy to sit in. And the way I would analyze whether I've had a successful lunch and learn is that sometimes we'll have 15 to 20 people in lunch and learn. If only like 3 or 4 of them fall asleep, then that's okay with me, which is typical. Don't get turned off by the fact that somebody looks bored or they finish their lunch and they're not interested, because you're going to get all sorts of people sitting in. Some of them really have nothing to do with the roofing, but they're there for a free lunch, so don't at all get turned off by that. If I get questions from 2 or 3 or 4 people in that group, even two, but if they're deep questions and you know that they come from a senior person, which often they do, that's a success. So I really don't care how many free lunches we hang on to, as long as we have, you know, a good percentage, to maybe 20% participation, I would consider to be a success. One of the things that we really that I use to differentiate myself is the fact that I've been in the market in downtown Toronto for 23 years, and most of my competition that comes in to do lunch and learns have just been in the MB market. Now they've moved to a TPO supplier, now they've moved to something else, and I'm fully aware they've been in that office maybe 3 or 4 times previously, representing different manufacturers or maybe representing different products. So I know also that they've got a weakness because they've called themselves an expert in a number of different types of roofs, and they've also been trying to push one specific product and then move to a different one. So I try to stay wide open with the options that we provide, everything from single plies to multi-plies to inverted to built-up configurations, including green roofs. So I try not to back myself into any one corner as far as offerings from the, and that's really appreciated by the people I'm presenting to. I think that the last thing you want to do is try to push any one of these designers in any one direction. Keep it open. So that's what I would recommend. For those of you who really don't have experience with design professionals such as architects or engineers, really want to stress that there's nothing to be fearful of with these guys. In fact, last year I have Mike Muldoon working directly with me, who sets up the lunch and learns and comes in each one of our presentations, which until last year he hadn't done before, and we've spoken about it. He said out of the 40 or so lunch and learns we did, there's probably only 2 of those where questions were posed that we couldn't handle. In most cases, these people are just information gathering at the time and don't like to speak out in front of a group on their own, so they're not going to put you in the hot seat. You're going to run into the odd situation where somebody wants to be heard, wants to sort of upset the lunch and learn, and you've just got to roll with it. And I usually sort of shoot 1 or 2 back from them and sort of to sort of add some humor to it and say I would be happy to handle your questions at the end, but due to time we need to keep rolling. And in most of the cases, if there's 15 people in the room, you've got one person that wants to act like that. The other 14 people are quite embarrassed about that person's behavior, and really are sort of embarrassed that you've been put in that spot. And but it really doesn't happen that often, so I wouldn't even consider that. One thing that I'd like to add is that the one area for the design professional that is very untraditional is the fact that it's very hard to get an immediate sale from them. So when you're selling to an industrial account or some hard real estate in your territory, as a Tremco rep, I found that I'd knock on the door and I knew that I was either going to win or lose right away. And if I was winning, I could probably count on a roof or some sale coming my way within a short period of time, a couple of months, but I'd have the job going in maybe a year or 2. With architects and engineers, you really have to stay hands off. You cannot chase them. You cannot stay on their back. You have to say, listen, I'm here for you as a resource, and I don't need to know specifics about jobs, where they're located, or when they're supposed to be roofed. And you need to really let go of that process, because if you can get 20% of their business, that's a significant amount of business. If you're expecting 100%, you're going to be let down. So that's something really to keep in mind. I've got projects with engineers where I've forgotten about them. We've talked about a roof 4 or 5 years ago, and then out of the blue, I'm getting calls from roofers because the project is going out. So you really have to have a bit of a paradigm shift and let the control go. Otherwise, you're going to get extremely frustrated, and I think this is where a lot of the early relationships with architects, they don't get off a launch pad because the Tremco rep gets frustrated. So we're throwing a lot of shit at the wall, and we're going to hope that some of it sticks, and we're going to keep going back. And my plan for most architects is to be in front of them doing a lunch and learn minimum of 2 times a year. So sort of early in the fall and early in the spring to sort of spread it out. One of the other things that we can offer these architects and engineers that other competitors can't is the fact that we're involved in a project from beginning to end. That means not just a specification period, but we're inspecting roofs on a daily basis. So I offer to take engineers up onto roofs. I say, well, have you ever seen a roof installed? Rarely do they accept, but in a couple of instances they have. But they appreciate being offered to come up. They say, oh, well, not only do you help us design it, but you're inspecting them on a daily basis, which also leads into our discussion about loopholes and warranties and what we provide compared to others. But try to look at what your competitors lack and try to play forward into that. And we know in the marketplace we're quite unique, and it's easy to find areas where our competitors are lacking. And the architects recognize that, and they'll follow you. So I thought I'd give an example of a project that I've been involved in, and it'll sort of give you an idea of how my relationship with engineers changes and evolves and continues to run smoothly. About 8 years ago, an engineering firm I was working with was involved in the design of a large train facility in downtown Toronto. And I'd been working with these young engineers for about a year in the design of the roof system. So I had 8 of these engineers from the same firm out to a golf course for a day of golf, but we did mock-ups of various different types of systems that Tremco could provide for this facility in order to train them and get them more familiar with exactly what they would be specifying. This went very well. They agreed that Tremco had good and suitable roof systems for the project. They called me and said, well, there must be somebody else that does what you do, and who would that be? And I, of course, had to give them Garland, and I said, well, Garland does that type of work. Of course, I'm a little bit nervous. I've done my job well, but we don't know how the next step will be with Garland. When I knew what day and what time the meeting was with the Garland rep, and shortly after the meeting, I got a call from these young engineers, which I think at the time were 28 or 29 years old, sort of very green, and they'd had a meeting with Garland rep. They were in transition with their offices, so they were in an office without any windows. It seemed like a sort of an office in upheaval, 2 young people, and the Garland rep looked down to these 2, and he basically told them in a nutshell that he was really busy and he really didn't have time to get involved in this kind of project, and that he was in a rush to leave. And they felt so offended by his attitude and how he talked down to them. He went to the effect of talking about rocket, and he pulled out a sheet of paper saying, well, this is from Garland Test Labs telling you how bad this rocket system is, but he wouldn't give the paperwork to them. So he was playing sort of, I don't know, James Rockford type role here. Well, they were so offended. And the key is not to talk down to these young people. To give an idea what this order was, it's come to be a $4.2 million material order, okay, which is obviously significant. But these two young engineers are now at different firms. The other 6 that were involved in the original meeting, they're all at different firms, which are now 5 different clients of mine. Because I treat these young people, even though they're younger than me, you don't know where the diamond in the rough is going to be, and that's going to be the same in meetings with architects. Just because they don't look like they're paying attention, or because they look like they're disinterested, let it go, because they can really turn around to drive significant business. So that one initial meeting 8 years ago probably turns into about 30% of my business every year from those people. So it's a success story, and don't always be, just do what you do right, and you can count on the competitors to screw up often. One thing that I find important with architects is to have regular contact with them, because when they're designing a project, oftentimes they'll choose something that comes to the top of their head first. So if you're in front of them on a timely basis, you might be there at the point where they're trying to make a decision on a roof system. And if you've had a contact day with them or a contact through email, then Tremco might be the solution. That's really difficult when all we have to do is offer roofing solutions, because they don't want to talk about roofing on a very regular basis, and you run dry on regular reasons to phone call these people. So I'd set up a regular email list of architects and engineers, and when Tremco would send out sort of an RCI bulletin or an industry update, something like that, or there were topical seminars in the Greater Toronto area, I would just send through sort of a for your information email, a group email to these people saying you might find this interesting, or this might be something that might be interesting to you and your staff. So it's very, very easy to do. It's good to do on a monthly basis, or even if you can do it every 2 months. And it's something that's very, very useful, and it just keeps you in front of them. I don't always get phone calls back, but it's another reason to say, hey, if we've got valuable information, it's a great way for them to learn and stay up to date. And the key is to have your name in front of them at the right buying cycle, in the right time.